take a moment and allow your eyes to close. And allow yourself to arrive fully into this sacred moment. Just allow that awareness to shift from being hooked into all of the hectic and changing, frazzled energy around. Just bring that awareness, bring the attention into the inner world. Bring it in. Allow those senses to withdraw and pull into yourself. Allow the awareness to merge with the breath. Don't try to control the breath, but just let the awareness merge fully into it. हमारे ऋषि कुमार लोग पीछे जाएं, सब शांत करा दें. And as you exhale, on each exhalation, just allow yourself to let go. Just let go of whatever you're holding on to. संदीप जी, आप जाके पीछे देख लेना, उसको बंद करा दीजिएगा. On the inhalations, feel the waters of Mother Ganga flowing into you. The waters of Ganga flow outside of us, but allow them to flow inside removing from within you all of that that is keeping you stuck. Feel those waters flow in, loosening up all of that is stuck within you. And on the exhalations, feel yourself exhaling and letting go. Letting go into the waters of Mother Ganga. Feel yourself exhale and just let go into these waters of liberation and purity. The power of Mother Ganga is the power of purity, the power of freedom. Allow yourself to become free. Allow yourself to give to her all of that is keeping you stuck. The anger, the grudges, the pain, the identification with the story. Just exhale. Let it go. Let it go into those rushing sacred waters of liberation. As you feel them flowing through you and then carrying back out of you all of that spiritual gunk and just carrying it out to the ocean. Slowly bring the palms of your hands together in Namaste at chest level. And just gently rub the palms of your hands against each other. Press the palms of your hands into your closed eyes. Slowly lower the hands and open the eyes. Welcome to Satsang. So beautiful to be together. Beginning, as always, with a question that's come in advance from our online family, or rather family joining from online. And then we'll open it up to any questions that anyone here has. Are refinement and constriction the same thing? Are refinement and constriction the same thing? This is asked by Dennis. No, they are most definitely not the same thing. Refinement, you can think of refinement much more like a polishing, a removal of impurities, a perfection. You can talk about refining a recipe, meaning you get it all just exactly right. You remove anything that's extra, anything you don't need. You remove too much of this or too much of that. You get everything just perfect. You can think about it of a refinement of the self. Again, a removal of habits, tendencies, thoughts that are unnecessary, impure, if you will. Not that we are impure, but just that are adding extraneous, unnecessary stuff. When you think about culture, music, art as being refined, you would say, someone's taste in music or art is very refined, meaning they're able to really understand the value, the depth, the meaning. They're able to see through kind of junk, noise, to get at the core. So refinement, especially on a spiritual perspective, is a removal of all of that that's extraneous, unnecessary, extra noise, and impurities. Constriction, on the other hand, and refinement is, of course, a wonderful thing. Constriction is most definitely not something that you want. Constriction's a closing. It's the opposite of expansion. My heart expands, or it contracts, it constricts. Constricting has to do with a suffocation, in a sense. Blood can't flow if it's my neck or my blood vessels, my lungs. Oxygen can't flow. And spiritually, if I'm constricted and contracted, that divine energy, it can't flow. So spiritually, refinement is great. Remove all of the extraneous noise. But don't go toward constriction. You want expansion. Not an expansion that comes by having more and more, but an expansion that comes by opening and realizing the truth of who you are. So it's not that I expand by getting more things, but that I expand because I recognize the very truth of who I am, which is expansion. The expansion, interestingly, the expansion that comes by getting more might look on the superficial surface level like expansion, but actually it's suffocation. If what I'm doing is I'm getting more and more identities, more and more titles, degrees, careers, this, that, more and more things to make me feel like I am expansive. See, before I was a nobody, now I've got all of these different degrees and titles and abilities and accomplishments and possessions and this and that. Like, I feel expansive. But actually, it's all suffocating me. Because it's layer after layer after layer of untruth on the truth. It is suffocating me. Whereas real expansion is not an expansion that comes by globbing more onto you, causing who you are to constrict and contract and suffocate, but through recognizing who you are, by allowing yourself to be free. And the true state of all of us, the actual natural state of all of us, is expansive. Our nature is expansive. Consciousness is expansive. Love is expansive. Divinity is expansive. Eternity is expansive. Spaciousness is expansive. Who we are is expansive. But if I try to expand by buying more, see, I went out very bored and kind of empty, and I came back with all these shopping bags on my arms, like just hanging off my arms, all the shopping bags. See how I've expanded all those things that weren't me before, now they've come back home as me. But actually all that does is it suffocates me. It suffocates me. Fills up my closets, fills up my house, fills up my mind. It's just suffocating. So the expansion comes from an awareness of who we are. So refinement and expansion are what we want to move toward. And of course they're different. They're just two beautiful qualities to move toward. Constriction is something that should be a red flag. So they're definitely not the same thing. Any questions here? Yeah, come up to the mic.
Excuse me, ma'am, I am very grateful to you. I have a question that every people have their own story.
I'm so sorry, can you say that again?
Every people have their own story, and sometimes what happen, we do not perform any act, but we get victim of that act, and that leads to depression. And sometimes people write suicide note, that people do suicide, and they think that after suicide they will get justice. Is it good things?
I'm so sorry. Let's go back to the question. Stay there. Just don't keep touching the mic because it makes noise.
Okay.
But you say we do an act and then we become a victim of the act.
No, we do not perform sometimes the act. We don't perform the act.
We don't perform our action, okay? Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we get victim of that. Like sometimes it's like society or some false implication. And sometimes some person write a suicide letter and do suicide.
Uh-huh.
So is it good things to write a suicide letter and get justice?
Is a suicide letter a good thing to do?
No, I'm just asking myself that people want justice after writing suicide letter.
Okay. Suicide in and of itself is most definitely not something we want to do. It's not something we even want to think about doing. For a lot of reasons. First of all, on purely a karmic level, whatever it is you're trying to escape from, you're just going to have to come back and do it all over again. I remember many years ago, my beautiful adopted daughter said something that was so wise. She was in college at the time, and tragically, one of the students at her college had committed suicide. There's far too many suicides of students in India with all of the pressure around grades and exams and marks and whatnot. And someone in her college had committed suicide. And she said, God, she said, no matter how much I was struggling, she said, I would never commit suicide because then I would just have to come back and do my 10th grade exams all over again. And it was such a sweet and yet such a deeply wise thing to say. Because whether it's your 10th grade exams, which in India are a really big deal, or whether it's any other challenge that you've been through, anything else that you've gone through in your life, you're just going to come back and have to do it all over again. So on a karmic level, suicide isn't the answer. You get exactly what you got this life, all of the challenges. But then you get the added challenges due to the fact that you threw away your life. That's also an action that has karmic repercussions. And so you actually are just shooting yourself in the karmic foot, you could say, because you're making it much, much worse for yourself next life. Another reason that suicide obviously isn't the answer is we tend to commit suicide when we feel like that which is wrong is pervasively wrong, as in every single area in my life is wrong. There is nothing that is good. One thing is really upsetting us, but we develop this pervasive idea. So let's say, for example, I'm upset about my grades in school as a student, or I'm upset about a relationship. We allow that upset to convince us that every single thing in our life is worthless and bad and awful. But we also allow ourselves to convince ourselves that time is stopping. That it's not going to be different tomorrow, next year, 5 years from now. And what we know is that things change. And I don't mean that in a light way, as in, oh, don't worry, you'll get over it, it's okay, tomorrow will be a new day. But I mean it just in the inescapable fact of life. There's change. When it's a great day, there's change. When it's an awful day, there's change. It's why in the Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavan Krishna is so clear that the yogi, the wise one, is the one who is the same, who has equanimity, balance, in pleasure and pain, success and failure. Why? Because you're going to get them both. You're going to get them both. Today is pleasurable, wonderful. It doesn't mean tomorrow is going to be. But in the same way, today is painful, also doesn't mean tomorrow is going to be. The nature of nature is change. And so The other dilemma with suicide is that it assumes that what you're experiencing now is pervasive, that this one major problem actually permeates every area of your life, that there is nothing that is good, enjoyable, meaningful, and that it's going to go on forever. And neither of those is true. The only time I could ever possibly even begin to think about sanctioning on a spiritual level suicide is that very, very kind of end of life, terminal illness. You're never going to get better. Lots of pain and suffering. Like that's a discussion worth having. There is no light at the end of the tunnel. We know where it's going. There aren't going to be better days. But short of an end-of-life terminal diagnosis that's going to carry nothing but pain, every decision to commit suicide, to me, and on spiritual levels that we're given, is absolutely the wrong decision by any perspective. Now getting to your specific question, but we had to address the foundation. Is it wrong or right to leave a suicide note to get justice? Well, remember, words, as was said by a very wise person, I'm just not sure who it was, are an arrow from a bow that you can never get back. So when you say to someone you love, I hate you, I never want to see you again, no matter how much later on you may say, oh my God, I'm so sorry, you know I didn't mean it. And even though they may forgive you and the relationship may go on, that arrow has gone. There's an impact. Now imagine that you've let loose that arrow and you have absolutely no ability to ever go back and say, hey, I didn't mean to hurt you. Do you really want your last words to be something that causes pain for someone else, even if it's to set them in their place, to make sure people know it's this person's fault, this is why? That's a lot of karmic baggage that on a personal level I wouldn't want. Like, we harm people enough in life, knowingly, unknowingly, consciously, unconsciously. But to leave this world, body is gone. Body is cremated and gone. Soul is gone. What is left? This letter. All that is left of your life is anger and vengeance in the form of justice? Really? You want that to be your legacy? What you want, since you're asking my advice, I don't give unsolicited advice, but since you've asked it, what I would say you want is, if someone's hurt you so badly that you feel like committing suicide and leaving a letter just to make sure everyone knows, have a sacred yagna fire. Write the letter. Write the letter. And then burn it in the fire. Burn it in the fire. And then give those ashes to Ganga. Because whatever somebody has done to you, no matter how awful it may be, there's one thing it doesn't change. And it doesn't change the fact that you deserve to be free. That is your birthright. If you commit suicide, you are the one who has sabotaged your own attainment of your birthright, not someone else. You. And if you live your life in anger and grudges, you are sabotaging yourself, not someone else. So write the letter. If you want to even send it to them, Like, hey, you've hurt me so much that I feel like committing suicide, and here is why. If you think it'll make a difference, send the letter. Let them know. Burn it in the yagna. Put the ashes in Ganga. Have a bath in Ganga. Be free. Be free. Purpose of life is not to put people in their place. It's not to make sure that everyone knows who's what. It's to be free. Your letter might get them in jail if what they've done is actually a crime. But it gets you in jail along with them, karmically. You want to start a whole new life, a brand new life in karmic jail? Deal with it in this life. Clear that karma in this life. If somebody's committed an actual crime against you, file a police report. Do whatever you need to do so that you can let go and you can be free. Because that is what you are here for. अब आगे वाले ले लेंगे हम लोग. इसको आप अच्छी तरह से गहराई में. मैं समझ गई. चाहे आपकी स्टोरी हो, चाहे किसी और की स्टोरी हो. It's you, it's your friend, either way. If it's your friend's story, tell them what we said. But whatever it is, take it very deeply, because ideas like that can actually run your entire life off track. So you want to be careful. So if it's not you, wonderful. If it's your friend, help them not get off track. Yes.
Pranam.
Pranam.
Fear of death. I want to know how can we come out to it?
How can we come out of?
Come out to it. Fear of death.
Fear of death. Okay.
1 minute.
Sure.
And what it's true, someone when he die, he faces lots of fear, pain and difficulty. Other side, someone when he die, without fear, without pain, very peacefully he go away. I want to know what should we do?
Beautiful. Beautiful. So fear of death is part and parcel of human life. Not only human life, it's part and parcel of life in general. Anything that is alive fears death. Try to catch a mosquito. Try to swat an ant. Nothing wants to die. Even all of the different trees and everything in nature has got some mechanism built into it to protect it. The 5 kleshas that are given to us in yoga, I won't go into them in detail because it's a much longer talk, but yoga speaks about the 5 kleshas, the 5 causes of pain and suffering in life. And it's avidya, lack of knowledge, lack of wisdom. Asmita, our ego. Rag and dvesh, this grabbing desires and aversion. Nabinivesh, fear of death. It's written back into the scriptures that these are the main causes of our suffering. So they're there, they're pervasive. We all have ignorance, we all have ego, we all have longings and aversions, and we all have fear of death. The only way to overcome it you likely will not necessarily overcome it biologically. The body is always going to try to do whatever it can to stay alive. It's programmed like that. But the mind can certainly overcome the fear. And the best way of working with that is to realize you are not that which dies. Those who pass away peacefully without fear tend to be those who are spiritual or religious of different traditions. Whether it's in a tradition like Hinduism that believes in a soul that doesn't die, that it's only the body that dies, so we anchor the awareness in soul that doesn't die, or whether it's other traditions that don't necessarily believe in reincarnation and soul, but they believe that you're going to heaven, or they believe that you're going to be with God. So in either case, having that spiritual anchoring and grounding, that faith, helps us know that, in terms of what I believe, it's not me who's dying. It's the body. I mean, when we were young, we all had favorite t-shirts or shoes or favorite pair of jeans, and you just wore them and you wore them and you wore them, and your parents said, for God's sakes, get rid of it. But you were like, no, it's my favorite. But eventually you just had to succumb because there were more holes left than jeans. Right? Or the shoes just absolutely fell apart and your toes poked right out of them. There comes a time when, no matter the attachment to it, you have to let it go. And so we recognize that the body is similar. It's not that we don't love it. It's not that it hasn't been beautiful and wonderful. But we recognize, hey, it's worn out its usefulness. Time for a new one. And so we let it drop. And so those who are able typically to pass on peacefully are those who spiritually know where they're going. And whether in their mind they're going into heaven, they're going into nirvana, they're going into oneness with God, they're going into moksha, they're going into another birth, whatever it may be. But that awareness of where I'm going and a faith in the one into whose arms I am dropping tend to go peacefully. Those without that, there tends to be a lot more fear. Fear of the unknown. In terms of pain, I think that's much more just a karmic issue of what karma you're burning through. You know, do you die in your sleep peacefully? Do you die in a car accident in a lot of pain? Do you suffer for months and months with cancer or some other disease? A lot of these things are just kind of karmically written into us. And, you know, we have stories of enlightened masters who died what we would consider painful deaths. You know, Sri Ramakrishna, for example, who died of throat cancer. Painful. Undeniably, physically painful. And he was in ecstasy. He was in ecstasy. He was one with God, knowing he was going home to the mother. So even though there may be physical pain, the spirit, the soul, that inner energy is calm and peaceful and even joyful at that moment. So physical pain at that time, I'm not sure there's much we can do to prepare for that. Obviously, take as good care of yourself as you possibly can. It certainly lowers the chance that you're going to have a physically painful old age. But otherwise, more importantly, work on a deep level to develop that spiritual connection. So that at that time of death, you know, I'm going into the arms of the beloved. You know, any trip that you're going to go on, vacation, trip, anywhere where you're going to go, you always want to know who you're going with, right? So either you go with your family or you go with friends, but you wouldn't want to go with a stranger. You want to know who you're going with. If you're going to be spending a lot of time with someone, you wouldn't just pick up a random stranger on the street and say, hey, I want to go, on a 3-week trip. You want to know, who are you traveling with? Who is this person? What are they like? What's their personality like? And yet when we know that our eternal journey is to be spent in the presence of, the company of our soul, our spirit, that divine consciousness within us, you'd think that we would spend more time getting to know that. I think one of the best ways to not be afraid when you die is to make friends with your travel companion in advance. Right? I mean, if you know that you're traveling with someone you love and you really trust, then honestly, it doesn't matter where you're going. Because you love the person you're traveling with so much, कि wherever you go, chalo, anand lenge, sati sate. Right? Plane is late, no problem. Plane is canceled, no problem. Sati sate. Anand. We need to get to know that aspect of us with whom we are traveling forever. We spend so much time getting to know those that we share a meal with, or a week with, or a year with, a few years with. Think about all the energy we put into friends in the workplace, friends in college, next door neighbor friends, whatever it may be. And that's great, sure, no problem. But we really should put certainly an equal amount of time and energy befriending the one who at the end of the day is the only one we're going with. Because I think that that's probably one of the best ways not to be afraid. Because kichalo sati sate. Right? Beautiful. Other questions? Yes.
Thank you for your input so far. My question is about doubts. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
So if we are having doubts of any kind, say about a job, about a relationship, how do we know that these doubts are true, in the sense of there's any kind of a inner source of wisdom who is warning us, who's saying, hey, you're on the wrong track? Or if it's simply something based on, anxiety or previous experiences.
Beautiful. This is the power of intuition, divine wisdom, inner voice. We absolutely have it. Absolutely. My way of looking at the world is very scientific and logical. I'm a person of faith, but my mind works very logically. And you think, okay, take a caterpillar, okay? Now a caterpillar spends its life crawling on the ground, along with all sorts of other types of animals that crawl on the ground, right? Earthworms, millipedes, snails, slugs, whatever it may be, that's joining them as they crawl on the ground. But at some point, that caterpillar gets a signal. Some kind of a sign, a signal that says, climb the tree. Then it gets another sign or signal that says, go out on a branch, weave yourself into a cocoon. Then another sign or signal that says, break free, you can fly. Now, the caterpillar's never learned about how to become a butterfly. She has no idea that her purpose in life is to become a butterfly. She's never seen anyone become a butterfly. Because if she ever saw her, relations climb up that tree, she certainly didn't recognize them when they flew back down. So, she has no way of knowing, but she does it anyway. She does it anyway. You never ever see a butterfly crawling its way back down the tree because it doesn't believe it actually can fly. Right? I mean, that would be the most natural thing. It went into the cocoon, a caterpillar on the ground, no wings. Now suddenly it's supposed to fly. The most natural thing would be like, no way. And it would come right back down the tree the exact same way it went up. But you never see it. You don't see butterflies scurrying backwards down the tree. They fly, they jump. And I give that example because when you ask, do we have that inner knowing? The idea that the divine creator would put knowledge and wisdom, a sense of knowing, a sign, a signal, an inner intelligence, into a caterpillar and not into us is inconceivable to me. Caterpillars have it. Seeds never sprout in the middle of winter. Because if they did, they'd reach the hard earth and they'd die. Little sprout can't push its way through a frosted ground, so they don't sprout. They wait till spring. They wait till the ground gets soft. There is that intelligence, which means we have it. We just have to listen. The dilemma, of course, is that unlike the seed or the caterpillar, we've got, as you say, all these other voices. Anxiety, desires, ego, all of that. That's why we meditate. It's why we become quiet. It's why we go in. Because it's the only way to become familiar with the inner voice. Otherwise, you don't have any way of knowing. All you've got is a lot of noise. A lot of different voices saying a lot of different things. And you have no idea what is the inner voice. And what is anxiety? What is fear? What is desire? What is just conditioning? When we meditate, we become much more in tune with and aware of the voices that are just noise. And you start to really tune in with an inner sense of wisdom, of knowing. So that later on when you need that, you're able to find it. When you have a sense of doubt, sit with it. Meditate on it. Feel it in your body. What does it feel like? Because anxiety feels different than an inner knowing. There's a franticness, kind of a manic quality. This is at least how it is in me. There's a manic quality. Whether it's the voice of desire, whether it's a voice of fear, whether it's any voice that isn't the actual inner voice. It tends to talk all over itself. I can't quite finish a sentence before it started another one. It makes me feel very restless. It makes me feel like there's a ping pong ball going back and forth in my mind. I don't feel settled at all. Whereas when there's an inner voice with an inner knowing, there's a sense of groundedness, of anchoredness, even if it's telling you something that isn't exactly what you would have thought you wanted to hear. There's an inner way of knowing, you know. And it tends to be still, and it tends to be stable, and it tends to be quiet. And it tends to be able to finish its sentences and not jump all over itself. So ask yourself. Also, I found if I tune in, they talk about the gut, like a gut instinct, trusting your gut. And we now know neurologically that actually the neurons, the very cells of the gut are like the brain. I mean, literally it is the second brain. Not just metaphorically, but actually biologically, neurologically. And what I have found is when I'm listening to my gut and it's really giving me information and intuition, it's a steady, calm, strong feeling. But it doesn't make me feel like there's a rock in my stomach or that I'm going to throw up. But when there's anxiety, it's much more of a sense of there being a hardness, a contraction inside. There's a sense of nausea. I mean, that's the butterflies in your stomach that they talk about. So when you've got that sense, it's anxiety, it's fear, it's desire, it's the what if, oh my God, the never-ending noise. When you go deeper, we meditate a lot from this chakra here, which is just below the belly button, that's called the Swadhisthana chakra. And Swadhisthana literally means the place of the self. And so it's very interesting. Energetically, yogically, right? When we talk about the chakras as part of the science of yogic energy, when we talk about gut instinct, that all of it is pointing us essentially to the same place. Tune in, go deep. What does it feel? What does your place of the self say? And listen. Sometimes I feel it in my heart, sometimes I feel it down here. But when it's a clenching in the solar plexus, then it's not that inner voice. Yeah, wonderful. Have a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful rest of your evening, everyone. I look so forward to seeing you all tomorrow. And so much love to you all.